It's like, oh, my employee doesn't want to work on Mondays, so I'm just going to close Mondays. No, you shouldn't engineer the business around the people. The people need to be engineered around the business, because the business's whole goal is to make profit, right? And my point is that managers will be soft on people, and when you are too soft on people, the standards drop and they tend to do whatever they want, which stresses out the best employees because the worst employees get away with murder, and then everyone's unhappy. And so you end up needing more people because everyone does less stuff or somebody calls out. It's weird. By having hard conversations and setting standards, we actually create a better workplace environment. Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Scott, multi-unit restaurant owner for almost 20 years. Now with Ownershift, we help restaurant owners increase their profits to their bottom line, increase the freedom with their time, and help them have more time with their families. So welcome back. I've got an interesting situation that I wanted to kind of tell you guys about. So we had this person that jumped on a call with our team this past week, and I get updates of all the people that we speak to, some of the problems they're having, because some of it obviously might be useful for this, and we can kind of teach people some of the stuff, some of the problems that they have, so we can teach people how to solve them. So there's this one person that came on the call, and the issue they had is their labor was too high. And what's really interesting about this is there's these limiting beliefs that people have that their labor can't go any lower, that their food can't go any lower. Food, people understand, can be lower. They might not know how, but they're more amenable to the potential that it could be lower. But labor is one where people just cannot believe that their labor can be less than what it currently is. So even in all of the ads that we run talking to restaurant owners, this is like the number one thing that people comment on, like, oh, you want to underpay people, or just like be terrible to your employee. I'm like, no, like it's actually the opposite. Like the first thing we do with clients is we actually look at their labor, and in a lot of cases we're actually recommending they increase their wages, but by doing so we want to attract better employees and actually retain the ones that are really great. So it's actually a better work environment, but we become more efficient in the process. And so this is what leads me into this, because this client came on there and they had seen our content, and they had basically talked with their team about, their labor was at like 35% or, 37%, something around there. And they're say, hey, like, I think we can lower this. I want to hop on this call and see what we can do about that. And so they were telling us that when they talked to their management team about that, their management team actually laughed at them. They were like, there's no way we can ever get below this. Like, we are running as bare bones as we are. And of course, I'm listening to this thinking like, dude, your labor cost is like 35, 36%. Like, you can get that lower. Like there's no way that you cannot get that lower. And so it just brings me, there's two things I want to talk about here. So number one is that if people don't know how to do something, the default is for them to think that it's not possible. So I know this doesn't, this isn't like how to lower your labor, but this is just, I want you to understand this, is that a lot of times it's the beliefs that we hold that affect how our business can grow and how our business can change, and it'll affect the decisions we make. And so what ends up happening is that if we don't think labor can go lower, therefore we don't try to change it, or if we don't know how to do it, we just assume it's not possible. But the truth is, you just don't know how to do it, so therefore the way you're currently doing it cannot get it lower. That I can agree with you on. The thing is, we have to change some of our assumptions. We have to change some of the way that we do things. So this is the first thing I want to deal with, is obviously, that you can bring your labor down. And again, I am not saying we should pay people less. In fact, I often say the opposite. And I am not saying that we should cut hours across the board, because the reality is we shouldn't be cutting hours across the board. There's a couple things that I like to talk about, and it's mainly around efficiency and the caliber of talent that you have in your business. So from an efficiency perspective, I'll give you an example. So I used to do this all the time. So I'll tell you a story in a second. So what I used to do is just picture this. So say I was writing out the prep list for the team, right? So I said, hey, Billy, like I was leaving at the end of shift or whatever. I'm like, hey, so I just need you to prep, like 3 Cambros of these tomatoes and just, prep those. I mean, like, it's been pretty slow, so don't worry about it. Just like, 3 is good. Just, make sure those are done by the end of your shift. So that's one option. Number 2 is if I say, oh my God, Billy, it's been crazy and we're expecting a huge day tomorrow. We've got lots of catering orders lined up. I need you to get 10 Cambros of tomatoes done. I need them done right away because we can't afford to wait a second. So which of those, the same person, but which of those instructions is going to get Billy to work faster and produce more? Even if he doesn't do the 10, he's going to do more than the 3. And here's the other thing too, is that Billy, in the first example, probably wouldn't even have accomplished the 3 because he would have waited, because people procrastinate, and we just have to understand that. That's what we all do. It's human. So he would procrastinate and probably not even get that done. And so then I walk in the next morning, I'm like, oh my God, it was slow last night. How could he not have even got those 3 tomatoes done that I asked him? Oh my God, what the hell's wrong with Billy? And Billy, if you're listening to this, you're awesome and I love you. But I always use Billy as an example, but Billy is actually a great employee for us. Anyway, he actually does his own music now and actually was nominated for a Juno Award in Canada. So anyway, it's pretty cool. Nonetheless, basically what happens is we adjust our work to the allotment of time that we give ourselves. If something is due tomorrow, we're going to work differently than if something is due 2 weeks from now. And people naturally delay. And so we almost have to create this artificial pressure when we're tasking things out. And so what I have to ask of you guys, and this is really interesting, I have noticed that busier teams, so let me phrase it this way. I found that when my location was slower and I had fewer people scheduled, they were way more efficient than to the point where I started adding, let's just use the example of like, say you've got 2 people in the kitchen versus you go to 5. And so what I found is that a 2-person kitchen ran way more efficiently than a 5-person kitchen. And I talked to a lot of other restaurant owners back when I was trying to figure this all out. And I was just like, how come my labor went up when that happened? And it's because the inefficiency actually rose. So people were actually less efficient with what they did. And here's what happened is that because as soon as they were all in their separate stations, as soon as they had nothing to do, they just waited. And so they had that time to sit and wait, and they didn't proactively do it because, oh, there's a bunch of people here, someone will go and do that, someone will go and do this, like, oh, it's not my job, that person. So when there's a lot of people often will deflect responsibility to others, or they'll just assume that someone will do it, so therefore they don't jump in and do it. And so this is the same thing. Say you task 2 people with one job, it has a less likelihood of getting done than if you task like 1 person with that same job, because then the whole responsibility falls to them and they take ownership of it. Whereas if it's like you tell 2 people to do something, they're like, well, I thought you were going to do it. No, I thought you were going to do it. Like it's, like there's a lack of clarity around that. So what I found is that the bigger the kitchen, the more inefficient it becomes, unless we actually get in there and create this artificial pressure and we create a culture that does that. And so the example of like a 2-person kitchen is just way more efficient because they just assume that no one else is coming, no one else will do it, so they have to do it. If it needs to get done, they're the one that does it, and they continually work. And as soon as they have a second, they're like, oh man, I got to dive into this next thing. Otherwise, at the end of the night, I'm going to have all this stuff to do, and I'm going to be here way too long, and blah, 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 blah. So that's how people change their work based on what's happening. And so when we talk to managers about this, the only thing that they see, what they view as a constant, are the people that they currently employ and the rate of efficiency to which those people work. Because if the managers you have never seen a more efficient kitchen, this is the best that they know. It may not be the best that exists, but is the best that they know. And their view of what's possible is limited by the view of what they have witnessed before. And so a thing that broke my conception, and I know I've told this story, so I apologize for those who are hearing it again, but the size of a sandwich that we used to make. My thought for years, like 10, 11 years, was we needed to load up our sandwiches, make them so huge and that was what would bring people back, but they were messy. And anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff whole bunch of reasons why that wasn't great. Our food cost also wasn't great. But I had this one manager who started making like these significantly smaller sandwiches. And they actually tasted better because you got like everything in every bite. And it was way better on food costs. And we actually started having customer compliments about it. And so that broke my belief of what we had to do, because I had a belief that was formed not on data, but just how I felt. And then I saw her do it and it worked. And I was like, oh, like you mean for the last like 10, 11 years, I could have dropped my food cost by 5% of sales just by like having smaller portions? Oh my God. It was like life-changing for me. Which sounds so stupid. Like, sure, like drop your portion size. But as soon as I say drop portion sizes, each and every one of you probably went, oh my God, customers are going to complain. Well, this is why we had to test it and figure out, okay, did that happen? Because obviously we don't want to hurt guest experience and stuff like that. But we tested it and we actually had positive customer experiences. Like we had an increase in customer experience. Even though price didn't go down, price stayed the same. We just made more money, but they got a better product. That was a net positive for everybody. And so like that just broke my belief around it. So I want you to understand that, again, it's the beliefs that we hold that will shape how we're able to change our business and grow our business in the future. It's literally like what you should be asking as an owner is like, what do I believe about my business and about the industry and about the things that are happening that other people who are ahead of me don't believe or see differently? Like, what do they believe that I don't believe? Because I need to adjust my vision. And the funny thing is, I heard someone say a statement similar to that like 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm like, oh, cool. That sounds good in principle, until you actually start doing that and your whole world explodes. I want to like this, maybe I'm planting a seed right now that a year from now you're going to understand, but I want to make sure I do that for you. So when we're talking about the labor, the managers never see what there's a possibility to change. They don't see the efficiency that can be changed, and they view the people that are there as a constant. And the reason why is because most managers are not great managers. I'll just be honest. Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you actually have training as a manager. Even if you have experience as a manager, doesn't make you a great manager, because there's also leadership and values, and there's other things that need to align with you. But the other thing too is that, I talk about restaurant profitability a lot. And the truth is, most restaurant owners are hemorrhaging money without even knowing it. That's why I created the quick 7-minute training that shows you exactly how to track your crucial numbers in just 5 minutes per week, and a free spreadsheet to help you do it. The exact same one we're using with hundreds of our clients right now. So if you want to stop leaving money on the table, just click the link in the description below for your free copy. Most managers are people-first managers, not business-first managers, right? Because they probably come from being promoted from within. A lot of us were. That's how we got to where we are. We probably were in the industry. We were an employee, and then we eventually became an owner. And this is the way I was when I was managing my first single location as an owner. Man, I was a people first. I was a people first owner, 100%. And guess where that got me? Absolutely fucking nowhere. And now let me explain, because here's what I will say. Because believing in people and working and investing in people will get you somewhere, which is great. But what I mean by that is, by being a people first manager, is you are accommodating to the people instead of the standards of the business. So I'll give you an example of that. So I had this one guy, I'm not gonna say his name, but I had this one guy, and I walked out the door at the end of my shift when he was coming in to take over from me. And I was like, hey man, like there's a big prep list we got to do. And, I gave him the whole list of things. It was going to like take him all night. And I'm like, man, we got to get that done right away. And so then like I had walked to my car, which, again, this had only been like 2 minutes. I had parked down the street or whatever. And then I realized I forgot something back in the restaurant. So I walked back. I had only been gone maybe 4, maybe 5 minutes. And I come in, and this dude is sitting at one of the tables with his feet up, reading a newspaper, literally feet up on the table, reading a newspaper. I've been gone 5 minutes. So like literally I walked out the door and he's like, I'm not going to do shit. And then he went and sat and then had his feet. And I came back, man, I was livid. I was livid about this. But the thing was, I had set the standard prior to that because I was younger. I was a similar age to the people that I was employing. I was a young owner. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? Once all the work's done, sure. Like if you need to study for your exams or you need to do a homework assignment, because most of them were in college. So I was like, yeah, you can do that. I set that standard. I was a people first manager. And in other words, I was soft, basically. We'll put it that way. Because people first shouldn't mean soft, but in this context is what I'm referring to. So I had low standards. I was soft. I let them rule the roost. If they couldn't work, I worked the shift. Like I did everything for them. I even went and I closed down the business for a day so we could have a Christmas party. And obviously we lost all of that revenue. And then I went and I paid for everything. I paid for drinks. I paid for food. And this is back when like my business had like very little sales. We needed every dollar. And I remember spending like $500 or $1,000. And granted, this was like 20 years ago. So like, you know, $1,000 significantly is valued much more today than it was back then. So, you know, that might have been $2,500 today. But the point is, I spent a significant amount of money on them. And then what killed me was that 6 months from then, none of those people were still employed by me. So I got kind of jaded at that point. And so the point is most managers are people first in that they're soft on standards instead of they're hard on the business standards. And so now what I eventually became as an owner was that I would go to bat for my people 100% all of the time. And like to the point where I like gave personal loans to employees, like whatever it, like I was there to help them in ways that most other employers would not have been. But I did not sacrifice my standards. If they did not meet the standards, I would be the first one to tell them that. And I was serious about the standards that we upheld. I was serious about the expectations we had. And what's funny is that people actually stayed longer because the type of people we brought into the business were people that also upheld those standards. So it became a good place to work instead of some people doing all the work and some doing nothing. So anyway, my point is that managers will be soft on people. And when you are too soft on people, the standards drop and they tend to do whatever they want, which stresses out the best employees because the worst employees get away with murder. And then everyone's unhappy. And so you end up needing more people because everyone does less stuff or somebody calls out. So you staff an extra person because you're expecting someone to call out. It just like it gets to the point where it's just difficult to manage that. So most managers don't see that. And they also see the people that are there as we can't change the people. They don't have a good eye on, hey, this person actually isn't a good fit for our business. They don't want to say that because they know Joe or they know Jane or what other random name I can think of next, Bob. They know that person and they like them as a person, so they don't want to get rid of them. But in reality, they probably need to find another place to work that's going to be a better fit for them. And that is okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Just because someone isn't a good fit for you doesn't mean they're not a good fit somewhere else. And we have to be cognizant of that and understand that. So the issue is that most managers don't see any of that, right? So when you tell them, hey, we need to cut labor or we need to reduce, and I say cut, but most people think we just like start slashing hours randomly, but no, it's not what we're trying to do. But reduce labor as a percentage of your sales. And when we do that, most people think that's impossible for these reasons. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is this owner came to us being like, well, if my management team won't do it, well, like, I guess I can't do it. And so I'm like, whose business is it? And this sounds funny as I'm explaining it. And you guys are probably listening to go like, oh, obviously, like that makes total sense. Like, you know, only Diddy would say that. But here's the thing. We are all making those same decisions in our business right now in one way or another. We are making a decision because the changing or the solution to that problem would be harder than what we were willing to deal with at the moment, right? And so this person, like if your management team are not on board so that you can make the profit you should be making, they shouldn't be your management team. You know, you may need to change your management team. You may need to find new people, but that is hard. And so therefore we just stay with lower profitability. But I mean, like 5 years from now, like what's going to change if you don't change? You know what I mean? So you're going to stay stuck. Your managers are still going to stay in the same place. Nobody's, they're going to want more money eventually. They're going to want bonuses and stuff like that. And you're going to be like, I don't have the money. But whose fault is that? It's yours. It's your freaking business, right? So that's what we need to understand about those things. So reducing labor is possible, but you got to do it the right way. You got to know how. You have to know how to be more efficient. You have to know how to actually get the right team in place. And if you don't know how to do those things, that's okay. It is possible. And it's just so funny that I see this all the time. And especially for me, like I also found that whenever my labor was over, it also always came with people who always complained about not enough stuff getting done, about more stress. It's so funny because so a non-management labor is what I measured. Again, picture a quick service environment. Labor is typically lower in a quick service environment than a full service environment. Obviously, there's two departments, blah, blah, blah. So for a quick serve, my labor was always like 23, 24% non-management, right? And then we found after we made all these changes, we were actually able to bring this down to a target of about 18 to 19% labor. So it was a significant shift. Once we actually, nailed the efficiency, nailed the systems, we dialed everything in and got a bunch of A players on our team. Like we were able to bring our labor down, which is great. So once we did all that, things were amazing. But depending on the manager I had, because again, I had 4 locations. So some managers would run it tighter and do the things properly that they should do. And some didn't always do that. Maybe they were a little more people first than they should have been, in which, we had to deal with. But so in those examples, sometimes on the weeks that labor would trend up to say 23 or 24% when the target was 18 or 19, on those weeks, it always accompanied complaints by the staff saying there weren't enough people and that we needed to staff more. And it always coincided with our weekly and monthly cleaning duties not getting done, because that's something we measured every week. Did we get our weekly cleaning duties done? Like, did all the stuff that was supposed to happen? And so we measured that every week. And so it always happened where labor would go up, and then the following week there would be complaints about that, and stuff would not be done. And it's funny because we had more labor as a percentage every time. So there should be more time to do the things. So it should be the opposite. People should be saying, oh, we have too many staff, and oh my God, we should have done more cleaning than what we should have. But what actually happens is the opposite. And the reason why is because everyone became less efficient because there were lower sales in comparison to staffing. So everyone, instead of working harder, worked slower until the very end, and they procrastinated, and then they felt overwhelmed because they just mismanaged their time. It's basically what happened. So, and there's another saying that I tell our clients all the time. It's like 2 people are more efficient than 3. Then you would think that wouldn't be the case. 3 people should get like 3 people's amount of work done. But if there's not enough volume for the 3 people, if there's enough volume for like 2.5 and you add a third, what ends up happening is one person just ends up yapping the whole time and talking and distracting the other people because, humans are social. So it ends up being less productive overall than if you just had the 2 people and they just worked harder. So anyway, just a couple of different things like that. And so when we think about labor, we think of it very statically, as in immovable, and we can't change it. It's bare bones. We can't go any less than this, but we are not looking at the other things that can change. And that's what I wanted to make sure we all understand. And if your management are telling you that line of bullshit, that it's impossible, you may need to find a new management team. Now, I'm not suggesting you fire everybody. What I'm suggesting is they just don't know how, and we need to show them how. And then if they don't get on board with it, well then, you have to understand that they're working more for the employees than the business. And just understand that you're always going to have a hard time getting to the profitability you need, because being a good leader is hard. Being a good manager is hard. And it takes hard conversations, and it takes calling people up, because people's natural performance state is not one that is revolutionary. It's not one that will change the world. Like, people often like to be comfortable. And so when we are trying to do something great, when we are trying to improve, we need to call people up. If someone doesn't do the shit they're supposed to do, we need to call them on it. We can't be like, oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Let me give you a big hug. No, there's times for that, but that's not every week. We actually need to call people up and set the standards. And that is what moves the needle in your business. And that's what great leaders do, because it forces people to change, forces people to grow, forces people to basically produce results beyond what they thought they were capable of. That's what great leaders do. What subpar leaders do is they allow people to stay the same, right? Or they change the business to fit them. It's like, oh, my employee doesn't want to work on Mondays, so I'm just going to close Mondays. No, you shouldn't engineer the business around the people. The people need to be engineered around the business, because the business's whole goal is to make profit, right? And then from that profit, we can do great things with it. You can go and pay people more. You can give bonuses. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can give money to charity, whatever you want to do. But you can't do that if the business doesn't make money. So you have to understand that's the business's goal. And there's lots of businesses that make money, lots of restaurants that make money, but it doesn't happen by accident. It happens intentionally. And so sometimes you may have managers that just view the world in a different way, and they take the easy way out. And that's not going to be the person that's going to put money in your bank account, in your business, and you are not going to grow with a team of managers like that. That is my story for today. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you may think a few things, maybe you're reflecting on some of the management you have. Because again, like, I've hired a lot of managers. I've managed a lot of managers, and there's some that were excellent, but I will tell you that the common denominator between the ones that were excellent were not even the ones that did more things themselves, because that's what a lot of managers do, is they try to do more things themselves because they're afraid of having the hard conversations. That's not a great manager. That is a great individual contributor. A manager actually gets performance out of other people instead of out of doing more themselves, because just doing more yourself is always going to burn you out. And so if you are putting in all the work because other people don't, then you are falling into that same trap. It means you're missing a skill gap, of being a better leader. So point is, there's some people that are great at it, but they're few and far between, and we need to call people up so that we can actually get the performance we need and change the business and make it sustainable. And by doing so, this actually makes a great workplace for everyone else. It's weird. By having hard conversations and setting standards, we actually create a better workplace environment. That's why we had people that stayed in our business. Like, we actually measured retention. Our former retention was like, our average was like 6 months or something like that. Like, when we first started measuring it, it ended up like our average retention being there. It went to like 2 or 3 years or something like that. I have to go back and look at the stats, but like, we 5 or 6 times our average employee retention just by implementing all this stuff. So they stayed longer, and people that have been there longer generally are more efficient. Anyway, but a lot of good things can happen. You just have to be willing to make the change, and you kind of have to have the cojones. And I want to try and be politically correct here. You have to have the gumption. We'll go with gumption to see those things through, despite what others might tell you, or despite, because they just don't know. They don't know the other side. And you just have to believe that it is possible and see it through. All right, guys. Hope this helps. We will see you on the next one.